first one was created using 2 rounded rectangles. Using the up and down arrow keys before you let go of your rounded rectangle, you can make it more or less rounded, right? So if you reach for the rounded rectangle and you get an object that looks like that and you're like, I don't know if that's the right object, it's because it's not rounded enough. Delete it, make a new one. And there you go. Hold the up key. And there you go. A couple mistakes you guys are making when you go to attempt this packet is, first of all, you're putting the gradients in your objects and stuff before you merge them. That's the number one thing. The other thing is I see people using colors and stuff like that. Just stick with straight black. Just stick with fill and no stroke. Leave the strokes off. Okay, when you're using the Pathfinder with strokes on there, you can come with some undesired results. So just stick with these regular shapes. Alright, so now that I've made a rounded rectangle, it looks like on top of that first one there's another rounded rectangle. So again, instead of making another rounded rectangle, I'm just going to delete this one here, hold down shift and make it a little bit smaller and put it on top. So I got my first shape. I got the basis of my first shape. I'm going to select them both. Use the Pathfinder to add to shape area. And hit expand. And now that's one object. Now I can put the gradient in. Now that I got my object done, go ahead and click on the gradient, put my gradient in. And I'm almost done. What did I forget? What did I leave off? The stroke. And so I will be taking points off for objects that aren't exactly like mine on the worksheet. So go ahead, click on your stroke, put the stroke in, and say Shazam. Shazam. There you go. Now you're done. You're not done until you say Shazam. Okay? Alright, the crescent moon I think you guys can get. The half star you guys can get. And I'll do the next one. Exclude overlapping shape areas. For the first 4 of them, I told you exactly what tool on the Pathfinder I wanted you to use. So for the next one, I said use exclude overlapping shape areas. So I can use, the 2 shapes I want to use is a rectangle and this hexagon. What am I doing wrong? I'm using gradients and I'm using strokes straight off, right? Because what happens is it takes the settings from the last object you made. So turn all this off. Just go back to black and white and take off the black stroke. Now here's a trick an old man told me at the top of a mountain. He taught me to use a second color so that I can see both of my objects. Alright, so I'm not using color to make these things colorful, and I don't want you guys to make this colorful. I want you to just use the grays that I have on the worksheet. Alright, but if you use a second color now, you can see both of them at the same time. So I'm going to select them both, and now on the Pathfinder I need to find the one that says exclude overlapping shape areas. And if you put your mouse over it, it tells you exactly which one it is. Here it is. Exclude overlapping shape areas. Shazam. There I go. I'm going to change this back to black. Or no, in fact, in the packet it says gray. So I'm going to change it to gray. And it also has a stroke. Put the black stroke on it. And now I'm done. Hold down shift. Make it a little smaller. And now I can move on. But if you're starting off with gradients, you're starting off with strokes, you're starting off with everything else except for straight black, it's not going to work out the way you want it to. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more. How how about the star? Did you guys get the star?
Yep.
The broken star? You guys got the broken star? I think the circle in the sun, I think you guys should be able to do that. Do you want me to do the extra credit?
Yeah.
If I do it, it won't count as extra credit.
Don't do it where we did it.
Okay. All right, then I'm done with that packet. Let's go to the last one, the pen tool. Make a new document, call it pen tool. Click OK. Now, when you're using the pen tool to make these lines and shapes, it might be helpful for you guys to see a grid. Because one of the things I'm noticing when I come around to your computers is I see, for example, your stuff looking like this. What's the problem with that? What's the problem with that? It's not even, right? So instead, if you go to View, Show Grid, View, Show Grid. This is a non-printing grid in your Illustrator document that'll help you keep things aligned and keep things straight. So View, Show Grid. The first one was the zigzag. So what I can do is I can use my grid to keep everything straight on the grid. So it says click at 1, hold down shift, click at 2, hold down shift, 3, 4, like that. Okay? First one, done. If you can't do that, I'm going to put you on a rocket ship bound for Mars. Okay. The next one were those curves. The curvy cues. And in order to complete... All right. The next one are those curves. Remember, when you guys are tracing, you shouldn't have a fill. You should just have a black stroke. No fill on these when you're tracing. Here's what happens when you have a fill. Here's how I know. Because you click around and you make objects that look like this. Okay? So take the fill off before you even start. You just need a stroke. So now it says shift drag from anchor point at 1 up to red dot at 2. Obviously there's no red dot, but wherever you click first, that's going to be 1. And so I'm using this grid, so I got a nice even location. So I'm going to shift, hold down shift, and drag up to 2. It says click at 3 and drag down to 4. Click at 5 and drag up to 6. Click at 7, drag down to 8. So do you guys see what I'm doing? I'm following the instructions, going through, but I'm actually dragging out my angles first. So when it's asking you to shift, drag, it's asking you to hold down shift, then click and drag up and click and drag down at those locations. Now, once you're done, use your black arrow tool. Hold down shift when you resize, make it a little bit smaller so it doesn't fill up the whole page, and put it over. Now you gave yourself a little bit more room. Okay. I think you guys can do the circle and the triangle. Now for the heart. That's probably the one that catches students up the most, is the heart. It's important for you to understand that a lot of times when you're going through this and you're making shapes, that you don't exactly make the shape the first time through. You got to go back and readjust your angles. And that's what the heart asks you to do. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit and make the heart. So step 1, it says to drag from anchor point at 1 to red dot at 2. So again, the first place you click, that's number 1. So I'm going to choose a nice clear place and I'm going to drag out to 2. It says drag from anchor point at 3 to red dot at 4. So again, I'm going to try to, 1 is here, 3 is directly across, right there. So click at 3, drag out to 4. Okay. It says click at 5 and drag to 6. So let's say 5 is right here. And I'm going to drag down to 6 right there. Now here's where it gets funky. It says click at 7, and 7 is directly across from 3. So it says click at 7 and drag out to 8. And then it says click at 9, drag out to 10. And you get an object that looks like this. Obviously not a heart. So what you have to do then is it says to option drag at 11, and that's this handlebar right here. Option drag at 11 and go back up to 12. So option will readjust your angles. Remember that? It says option drag at 6 and go back up to 13. Well, I have no handlebar here at 6. So what you have to do is use your white arrow tool and click on that anchor point that we made before. Now you can hold down Alt, or excuse me, went away. Now you can hold down Alt, and I'm holding down Shift at the same time, and drag up to 13. And there's my heart. In the morning class, they told me it looks like an apple. So what I did is what you can do is you can move anchor points. Remember we learned that yesterday? So I'm going to click this anchor point at the bottom and just pull it down a little bit. Give it more of a heart look and feel. What's that? Did they use what? The pen tool? Yeah, that's what you have to use in order to trace anything. And that's what our next assignment is going to be, to trace a guitar. A guitar, yeah. Okay. So there's my heart. Now, the last object in this is the clover, and here's what not to do. I'm not going to say any names, George. Here's what not to do. Don't make a heart and then just rotate it around and then try to merge them together. Instead, make the clover one single object. Okay? If you can do that, I guarantee you it'll pay off, because you'll be able to do a lot cooler stuff in Illustrator in the long run. Okay? So after these 3 worksheets now, we're moving on to actual projects where you're going to be required to do stuff on your own. There are no more packets that instruct you to click here, click there, click here, click there. Now I want to see what you can do with the program. Okay? So that is all from me.